Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of the Rotoworld Football Podcast. I'm Josh. That's John. Dixie, how are we?
We are always doing great. Week 11 now.
It is.
Inching closer and closer towards the end of the season.
It's wonderful. Some might say it's flying by too fast. I would not say that.
I would not say that. I'm happy and content with the speed it's going by.
We do love you for joining us each and every week.
We do,
We appreciate
yes.
that. Daigle, every week, every episode, I navigate us through the top with the show open. And it's tiring because I have to think and be creative heading into this office show 3 times a week.
Sure.
What are we going to talk about? I want you to carry us through this segment at first. I know I'm tossing this on you, and you are unprepared for this.
I mean, I'm unprepared, but I'm struggling with 2 life battles right now. So do you want A or B?
I mean, on the scale, I want the one that is less crippling, that is less worrisome, that is not going to destroy your life if I give you the wrong answer.
Okay, let's go with A because I do struggle with it every morning now since I now live on the East Coast, as we know, and it's gotten colder. And apparently it gets much colder. It gets much colder, apparently, which I'm terrified of. But I don't know how to wear long johns. And so I've tried it every way. Do they touch your skin? Do you go boxers over or under? And do you go wool socks over or under?
Daigle, it's not even cold yet. It's like
Listen,
35
that's not the point.
degrees outside.
Relatively speaking.
We can poll the entire NBC Sports office right now, and I guarantee you would be the only one at this current moment that would be wearing long johns.
Well, I can pull up LA's weather in my phone app
and
like
look at
35
degrees
and be like, oh, well, it's much warmer there, so that's what I'm used to.
You're going to show up when it's 10 degrees outside and windy with just icicles coming off your beard.
Yeah. I agree with all this, but this doesn't answer my question. I really don't know how to do it.
I never wear them.
When I tried out for the baseball team when I was 12, I wore my cup accidentally over my shorts because I didn't know how to wear it. I never played baseball as a kid, so I just wore it over everything. It's like long johns right now. I'm struggling. I don't know what to do, and so I've done 3 ways. And right now, I think I'm most comfortable with them over boxers and wool socks. But is that the correct way?
Okay. Does it have... what's the right term? Does it have a slit? Does it have an area that is easily accessible?
No.
No, it doesn't.
No.
Well, that just sucks all around.
Well, that's.
By the way, whenever you talked about your cup and jockstrap being on the outside of everything, I just got this image of Quail Man.
Yeah, it looked like
that's Halloween next year for you.
Listen, we're not the brightest in some aspects of life.
The answer here is you just don't wear long johns. Like I never have since I was probably 8 years old going down. You have them. I don't want to. Okay, we're good. Yep.
I have them on right now.
I will be starting the podcast.
It's cold outside. It's 27, Josh. We're not ready for winter.
It's not 27. It's a high of 50 today, Daigle.
No.
It's a high of 50 today.
Not when I was walking over here.
Oh, my gosh. All right. Let's move on.
You left the beginning of the podcast to me.
Never make that mistake again.
Who do you have to blame?
All right. It was a wonderful week 10. I mean, dynamite, some might say. This is going to be electric week 11 as well. Let's start off with maybe the game of the weekend. Houston Texans traveling to the Baltimore Ravens. A 50 total in this matchup. The Ravens at 7-2 are 4-point favorites here over the 6-3 Texans. Both teams are at the top of their division. Each week we look at the schedule, Daigle. At least I do. And I say, can this be the game of the season? And I think this has the chance to do that because these are 2 quarterbacks that are, the young revolution at the quarterback position, ones that might not have made it 20 years ago because of types and evaluations that were so different back then, but both are absolutely thriving in 2019.
And the Ravens defense continues to improve. The last we saw them play truly a stout offense was that Seattle Seahawks game, and they stonewalled who we believe is the MVP on the year. Russell Wilson was 20 of 41 in that game, 240 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 pick. And now you get what is probably their second best competition in the Texans, and it's worrisome. Will Fuller, we think, may be back. He is practicing this week. But even so, this Ravens defense is, what we talked about on Monday, much improved. Not the same as they were previously.
Well, the passing defense has really improved.
Correct.
And it's because of the trade for Marcus Peters, and they're able to move Marlon Humphrey in the slot, and Jimmy Smith is back healthy. Earl Thomas is somehow getting younger as the season goes on. But the run defense is not good. Their run defense is down to 28th in the NFL. And run DVOA. And you look at the Houston Texans, this surprised me. In this game, the Texans have the leading passer, they have the leading rusher in Carlos Hyde, and they have the leading receiver in DeAndre Hopkins. So if you look at those elements, despite how great we feel about the Ravens right now, and they've won 5 straight, it wouldn't be a shock to see both of those, all 3 individually, thrive in this game, and maybe some tertiary pieces looking great as well, and the Texans have come out on top even on the road.
It does seem like a game the Texans need to lean on their ancillary weapons. Carlos Hyde, Duke Johnson, who, I mean, best case scenario, he is coming off a season high in touches, so at least they're getting someone involved, has run 20 routes, at least 20 routes his last 4 games. But, you know, this Will Fuller, DeAndre Hopkins situation, DeAndre Hopkins is a wide receiver 1 no matter what.
But he's a 4 play now.
And exactly. The last 3 games, he has buoyed Fuller's absence into a 36% target share, wide receiver 4 in that span. Before that, though, remember, only a 28% target share, and he was wide receiver 15 on the year with Will Fuller. So now we take that and him going against their improved corners, it's a much tougher situation. That's why I think Darren Fells, as well as the other guys, are involved more. And
Laremy Tunsil's returning back in this game, and the Texans are coming off their bye week. They beat up on the Jaguars prior to it. Let's look at the Ravens offense, though.
Yeah.
Again, I mentioned that they've won 5 straight. The passing offense is now top 10 in the NFL in terms of passing offense DVOA. You know, Lamar Jackson finally, and this was surprising to me, finally completed 16 regular season starts underneath his belt. Here's his statistics: 63 completion percentage, 3,150 passing yards, 20 passing touchdowns compared to just 8 interceptions, 1,258 rushing yards to the tune of 5.6 yards per carry, and 10 rushing touchdowns. Saquon Barkley's first 16 games were fantastic. Lamar Jackson only has 49 fewer rushing yards in that same span.
And I mean, the dude's on pace to break Michael Vick's record by over 200 yards.
It's absolutely wild what this offense is doing, but some might not realize this, and I didn't until I researched this game. The Houston Texans are only allowing 84 rushing yards per game. Something has to give in this matchup for the Ravens to run their style of offense. However, it's not like the Texans have played an offense quite like the Baltimore Ravens this year. Every single week we see Greg Roman doing something more creative. This past weekend it was a triple option with Mark Ingram, Lamar Jackson, and RG3 in the backfield. And the key, the X factor here, is that Marquise Brown returned last week, immediately saw a downfield target, and he just opens up this passing game a little more, because we've seen Mark Andrews struggle at times. Willie Snead has had to step up. Marquise Brown is the difference maker in that offense if he's getting the ball, if he's not getting the ball. And I would be shocked if he doesn't hit a big play in this game.
Yeah, Marquise Brown played only 40% of their snaps last week, but we saw that was such a blowout against a Bengals team that literally threw their arms into the air and gave Joe Mixon 32 touches because they didn't know what to do and how to respond. I'm not concerned about Marquise Brown. If we think this is a competitive game, and we do believe that's what it's going to be, he should be on the field for his full allotment of snaps. And Mark Andrews as well. It was encouraging. Mark Andrews played only around 30% of the snaps against the Patriots. He was back up to 50%. And I know we look at that and think, oh, only 50%. Like, why do you want to play him? But he still ran a route on 94% of Lamar Jackson's dropbacks. He is on the field as a pass-catching tight end anytime Lamar Jackson is set to throw the ball, and that's all you want in that offense because it's so concentrated. Mark Ingram isn't involved in the passing game whatsoever.
Nope.
It is literally Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews, and so I'm okay with him splitting snaps with Nick Boyle and Hayden Hurst as long as it means Mark Andrews is still using properly.
When I look at the game, I mean, any time that Deshaun Watson is an underdog, he performs quite well. I just think about it with this, that with how good the Ravens secondary is, he's going to have to beat the blitz because Wink Martindale has dialed it up considerably since the addition of Marcus Peters. And that's the element that I don't know, because despite the Texans being good in their run defense, I can't really point to 1 or 2 players being like, yeah, they can be difference makers on the defensive side. I can do that on the Ravens side, so it's much easier for me to see them win this game.
Yeah, Deshaun Watson averaging over 8 yards per attempt when trailing, and if you do think the Texans escape this one with a win, it is because of him. That's it. I am still concerned, though, how they stop the Ravens offense as a whole, because that defense is still terrible. Like they're picking up Garyon Conley and Vernon Hargreaves thinking these first-round pedigrees solved their issues, but there's a reason those first-round pedigrees were available to anyone. They were the only team to even try to claim Hargreaves for a reason.
Should we move on?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go to the next game. Jacksonville Jaguars at the Indianapolis Colts. Colts 5-4, 2.5-point favorites in this one, a total of 44. First, let's look at the Jaguars, because they are coming off their bye. It feels like forever since they played. These last 2 weeks have slowed down for me. But we need to point out most importantly, Nick Foles is making his second debut of the season.
Yeah.
He barely saw any time in week 1 before suffering, was it that collarbone injury, that shoulder injury? He suffered the injury on a touchdown pass. That was one of the more beautiful throws we've seen of any Jaguars team. But the focus, no matter what, in a win, in a loss, is going to be how much more of a difference does Nick Foles make than Gardner Minshew make? And at the very least, is he playing as well as Gardner Minshew played for those 8-9 weeks?
Nick Foles, we know, has a big arm. I would like to think, and even he got hurt on a deep throw to DJ Shark, which was the beginning of DJ Shark's second-year breakout. But I think the big winner in all of this is actually D.D. Westbrook. We talked about D.D. Westbrook in the offseason, and I know you were fading him. I was higher on him. But the
Turned out to be true.
Well, no, because you banked because you banked on D.D. Westbrook if Nick Foles was under center for the entire year. No, you can pull up I know you're pulling up his stats right now, but his stats at this point don't matter. Nick Foles came into the year.
Well, I didn't draft him, so they do matter.
Nick Foles came into the year.
To the people who drafted him, it does matter.
Throwing to his slot receiver at the second highest rate among quarterbacks over the last 2 seasons. Now Nick Foles is back under center. I would imagine he peppers D.D. Westbrook as a top 30 player over the rest of the season starting this week.
It's a fair question because you talked about DJ Chark.
Your hindsight analysis.
It's not hindsight analysis, dude. If you drafted T.D. Westbrook where he was going,
okay, you're unhappy, sure.
You would be frustrated.
But you were not incorrect, I don't think.
We got to the destination in a different way. Mm-hmm. The destination was still the place we were hoping to go to.
That's fine.
But you bring up a good point. Is everything going to be different on this Jaguars team? The running game is not going to be different. No. You know, Leonard Fournette is still going to get 20-plus touches each and every week. He's still going to be involved in the passing game, surely. But are the receivers going to be a difference? Because we saw Gardner Minshew thrive in chaos, thrive outside of structure, buy himself those extra moments, create magic when nothing was there. We have years and years and years of Nick Foles play. And while that Super Bowl run that the Eagles made was magic, it wasn't necessarily Nick Foles creating that magic. It was him winning in those plays that Doug Peterson called and in those moments that were critical. If it's just going to be in the structure of the play from now on, I agree with you. I think DJ Chark is still going to be absolutely relevant. And you should still absolutely start him. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure if we're going to get those big plays, those big vertical shots, those outside of structure deep shots that we got with Gardner Minshew. And instead, it seems like we're going to get your typical 3-5-7 step drops, D.D. Westbrook more targets. Chris Conley's someone who might be less and less relevant as we move on.
Yeah.
The big focus, and I know I just asked it and I'm repeating it already, is because I was a big Gardner Minshew fan. Like, he showed starting quality ability in the NFL. And it still shocks me how quickly the Jaguars made this decision prior to the bye, just saying, no, we're good. Nick Foles is back to being our starter.
The more I thought on it, though, since our last conversation about it, I think it actually is reasonable. I don't think either side is correct or incorrect, because if they don't play Nick Foles, what do? They just get rid of his contract this offseason anyways. Yep. So you have nothing to lose by just playing him. So I don't mind it at all. But Leonard Fournette, you talked about not going anywhere. In fact, I would poise him for a second half huge breakout. The dude has 225 touches and has only scored 1 touchdown. He's still going to be involved, and the floodgates are going to open. And yes, it hurts to watch him run inside the 5 because they are one of the offenses that ignorantly stuff the line of scrimmage and then try to create room as opposed to spreading out. But
he's also one of the worst goal line backs in the league right now.
That too. He's a little slower.
Which is wild.
It doesn't help that his coach.
Sure. It also doesn't help that I wouldn't even say that Leonard Fournette is a great running back in the NFL.
That's fair. But he's getting all the opportunity in the world and will continue doing so. And he's due for positive regression.
On the other side of this, we have Jacoby Brissett likely returning. He is practicing. He did practice before last week. We know the Colts are coming off an awful loss to the Miami Dolphins. And Brian Hoyer played like absolute crap.
I was completely wrong about Brian. I didn't think they would lose a step. It turns out Brian Hoyer shouldn't be in the NFL.
Well, it was a stupid loss to the Dolphins. T.Y. Hilton still remains doubtful, and that takes away an explosive element of the team. You know, looking at that Dolphins game, we kind of thought that at the very least, if all things were going wrong, this offensive line could just run over the Dolphins' defensive line, and they could, maintain at least neutral game script in that situation. Did you know that Marlon Mack leads the league in rushing attempts that have failed to gain yardage?
I did not.
That's wild. With how great this offensive line is at creating space. And I don't know if this is the case, but just thinking back to Marlon Mack coming out of USF, he was someone that tried to make so many people miss in the backfield. I think he's changed that way of how he plays the game. But this team should not be leading the league in rushing attempts that fail to gain yardage. by an individual back.
I completely agree, but when you watch them, their offensive line has struggled. Like, they're no longer maulers. Would you agree? Yeah.
Quentin Nelson is.
Okay, well, Quentin Nelson is, but they thrived on their offensive line being the strongest point of their offense last year, and I think they maybe have not struggled, but they're not like a top 3 unit as they were last season. Jacoby Brissett back will certainly help matters. And the interesting note from their offensive usage last week was that for the first time all year, Eric Ebron out-snapped Jack Doyle 43-42, saw a team-high 12 targets. Only a few short hours after, as we know, he kicked open the door to Frank Reich's office and demanded more touches. And they actually got him involved as a pass catcher more.
Yeah, and then they handed an interception to the defense.
They will do that too, yeah. And as we know, Brian Hoyer, though, no longer under center. Jacoby Brissett practicing in full. So I'm fine. I think you go back to Zach Pascal. I think you go back to Eric Ebron. Jack Doyle's a floor play. Yeah. And I would like to think they can pull away with this win. But Jacksonville's pass rush is pretty good.
They are good. They have 2 very, very good pass rushers.
That is their strength of that defensive unit.
Yeah, and Yannick Ngakoue. You know, it wasn't long ago when we saw Jacoby Brissett make that otherworldly throw rolling out of the pocket against the Denver Broncos and making it along the sideline. But that was a T.Y. Hilton. That was back when there was some positivity around the Colts right now. The Colts win close games, and this is going to be a close game. Again, a 2.5-point spread, but I see Jacksonville coming up on top. I really do. All right, last game for just me and you. New England Patriots and the Philadelphia Eagles. 3.5 favorites. The Patriots are on the road. A 45.5 total. 8-1 versus 5-4 for Philly. Both teams are coming off a bye. You don't see that too often. We're getting a couple times on this slate, I believe. Last lost to the Baltimore Ravens. The Patriots did before that bye week. How do you feel about the Patriots heading into this one again, coming off their first loss of the season?
What if I told you I think the Eagles are a nightmare matchup for the Patriots?
I think that you have forgotten how good this Patriots team is.
Maybe so. Okay, so let's one at a time here. Let's go Patriots offense really quick. Tom Brady is actually number 3 in the league in passing attempts because this team has to throw the ball from 3 wide receiver sets.
They can't run right now.
Exactly. And we saw what happened with that offense with Mohamed Sanu fully integrated before they hit their bye. And yes, it was a negative game script throwing against the Ravens, but Mohamed Sanu played every single snap, led the team in targets with 14. But even so, Philip Dorsett played 1 fewer snap and ran 1 fewer route. All 3 of them, Julian Edelman included, will be on the field against this Patriots defense, or against the Eagles defense that we know has allowed a top 5 amount of fantasy points per game to opposing wideouts.
They've actually gotten a little bit better, though, as they've gone along. This surprised me. The pass defense has climbed all the way up to 15th in DVOA across the NFL.
So I'm glad you used DVOA because I figured their defense has only gotten better statistically because, and we're about to talk about their offense, they've become a power running team, actually, because they have no choice with Deshaun Jackson now permanently out, likely for the rest of the season. They know they have to move to 12 personnel every single set. They have to get Ertz and Goddard involved as their main receivers because Jeffrey continues dropping balls and underperforming, and they really have no one else outside of Nelson Aguilar.
So how does that impact their passing defense that I just brought up?
The Phillies passing defense?
Yeah.
Well, statistically, I meant they slowed the game down
right.
so they don't face more offensive plays.
For the opposing offense.
But even so, if the Patriots get 35 to 40 plays off, they can still easily score. In my mind, anyways.
I knew what you meant. I just wanted the people out there. I can read your mind. They can't. I totally agree with you on the Eagles side of this because they have no explosion anymore. You know, like we thought when Deshaun Jackson was coming back into this lineup that they would have like this opportunity to go attack vertically like they did earlier in the season, and it's gone already. Like it was just in for a few snaps and it's gone. And when they tried to, pick up the pieces and tried to move it forward explosion-wise, Miles Sanders got more opportunities, Dallas Goedert got more opportunities. But where this offense has been at their best is their running game and Jordan Howard and giving him like 18 touches, 20 touches a game. But if the Patriots defense has been susceptible to any area of an opposing offense, it's the running game. I mean, they gave 149 yards to the Baltimore Ravens and 141 yards to Cleveland backfield.
Yep.
Now, the Ravens' run game is quite different than what Philly's going to bring out. And Cleveland has Nick Chubb, and obviously the Eagles don't have Nick Chubb. But if you look for a glimmer of hope anywhere, I guess that's it.
And like I said, I believe that's how they'll attack this defense.
But the defense is still great.
Yes, the secondary is great. They are prone to giving up yards in the rushing attack, though. And that's what Philly has become. Over the last 2 weeks, they have moved, since they got their corners back, actually, over the last 2 weeks, they've now ranked top 4 in neutral run rate because they are just rushing the ball. Jordan Howard in that span, 19 and 23 carries. And that's what's going to happen against the Patriots. They're going to disperse Jordan Howard. Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz are the big ones here because before the Eagles hit their bye, Dallas Goedert hit season highs in snaps, routes run, and slot snaps. He and Ertz now can both simultaneously become top 10 tight ends the rest of the season because they are the top 2 receivers for the Eagles for the rest of the season.
Is this our friendly wager this week? I mean, they're getting 3.5, the Eagles are, and you seem very confident in that.
Yeah, I like
right.
the Eagles.
I'll take the over.
Friendly wager?
3.5.
What do you want to bet a Vikings jersey to wear on the podcast or something next week?
No. Jerseys are for children. Time now for the first guest. Should we call them guests?
You should call him by his correct name. I've heard that.
Patrick Doherty. Patrick
No, that wasn't
Doherty.
it, but that's okay.
All right, he's here. He writes the rankings up on Rotoworld. Patrick, let's start. You got to pick these games. Congratulations. New Orleans Saints at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Saints on the road, 5.5-point favorites, a 50.5 total. Again, the Saints are 7-2. Tampa Bay is a lowly 3-6. Pat, the Saints are coming off an awful loss to the Atlanta Falcons that made 0 sense. Drew Brees was sacked, I believe, 6 times. That was the first time he's been sacked since week 1. What's your panic level, or is there any, on the Saints offense?
It's low. I mean, the Saints seem to have a burn the tape game, once or twice a week every year. Remember last year when they almost lost to Tyrod Taylor and the Browns in week 2 at home? Even the best teams have these kind of bad. I will say with Drew Brees, so he's had one super dominant game since returning, and then this huge dud last week, and both are at home. Now we're finally getting our first road Brees, really since week 2, when he got injured against the Rams. But if we're going to take road Brees, away from the Superdome, a good place to do it would be in a game with a 50.5 over/under versus, a pass funnel defense in the Bucs. So this has to be a bounce back spot for Drew Brees, right? I have him confidently ranked in the top 5, and I think the Saints are going to basically operate as if last week never happened.
Well, let's go to this rushing attack, though, because Alvin Kamara, we thought was going to split more touches with Latavius Murray, but Kamara, he ran 45 routes last week, 12 more than his previous season high, and I think that's just because game script got completely out of hand. Do you see Latavius Murray more involved this week?
I will say, I think on the Sunday show, you guys thought Latavius Murray would have.
I still think he will be, honestly.
Me too.
And I didn't. So I'm going to victory lap. I'm adopting the victory lap lifestyle. And Alvin Kamara just had a huge game. Just a huge game. I think he had 20 yards rushing. No, he did have the 8 catches though, as you alluded to, John. And against this great run defense, I think they're going to need more Alvin Kamara through the air again. And it's kind of a shaky setup for him, but especially after that fiasco last week, I think the Saints are going to want to try to get everything reestablished. That means using Alvin Kamara like his normal way, and again, this is a defense where they might have to pass the ball to their backs through the air, and I think that'll, even if Kamara has another shaky day on the ground, I think the receiving usage will keep him propped up because it's not like last week was the first time Alvin Kamara has ever caught 8 balls. It's something he can do every week. So yeah, it's a shaky setup in the ground, but I like Alvin with the passing game work to keep him in that mid-range to high-end RB1 area.
I don't need to ask you about Michael Thomas, who's pacing the all-time record for receptions in a season, and now he gets one of the best matchups he could ask for this season. The Bucs just cut Vernon Hargreaves. Actually, Jamel Dean, who DK Metcalf ran all over a couple weeks ago, had an awesome bounce-back game last weekend, but still, we expect Michael Thomas to have a big game, Jared Cook should have a big game. Pat, let's look at this Tampa Bay offense. They stopped a 4-game losing streak last week of win over your Arizona Cardinals. We know Marshawn Lattimore is sidelined for the New Orleans Saints defense. We know that Andrus Peat is sidelined on the offensive line for the New Orleans Saints. Pat, I don't get this Bucs team. I guess I do, and it's this simple. They are bad, but they are entertaining. And Jameis is like a train wreck each and every game. He is not getting better. He's just doing more of the same, and sometimes that can give you 3 touchdowns. Sometimes that can give you 5 interceptions. It seems like an easy offense to predict each and every week because you have Chris Godwin, you have Mike Evans. I guess the only person I should really ask you about, though, is Ronald Jones.
When you say you don't get this Bucs team, you actually you get the Bucs team.
Okay.
Well, the skeleton key to this Bucs team is Jameis Winston. They're a team quarterbacked by Jameis Winston. This is what a team quarterbacked by Jameis Winston will look like. Doubling all the way back real quick, a big concern for Michael Thomas is Vernon Hargreaves' release. That's a big concern for him.
We do actually need to look at Tre'Quan Smith, though, who played a career high in raw snaps last week.
We don't.
I think
we don't.
we don't. I think Tre'Quan Smith has a good week, guys.
Ted Ginn.
I love Tre'Quan Smith. I got him on the Dynasty team. The Bucs, Ronald Jones. I was very concerned because first off, it should have been a great day for Ronald Jones. He had 8 catches, double his previous season total. That's like basically him like banging down the door to be an every week running back 2. And then late in the game, he loses like one of the softest fumbles you'll ever see. It was the rare untouched fumble. He was trying to re-secure the ball and just fumbled it. Horrible gaffe, the kind we've kind of come to expect from Ronald Jones. So that really had me worried, especially because Peyton Barber then played the final drive of the game and scored what proved to be the game-winning touchdown. But Bruce Arians basically said it was water under the bridge on Wednesday, actually said that passing game usage should be maybe his new normal going forward. So Ronald Jones, I think, is locked in as an RB2 right now and has the setup for a lot more. I mean, if he's catching even like 3 to 4 weekly passes, that's a huge upgrade for him.
We can hope that O.J. Howard is just as involved last week. Or this week as he was last week. All right,
I don't know. Do we hope that? Because to me, that scares me as someone who has a lot of Chris Godwin shares. If O.J. Howard's really playing every snap now, actually involved in the passing attack. So to me, I'm over the O.J. Howard. I just wish he would stay away so he doesn't hurt our dear Chris.
That's very selfish of you, Pat, because a lot of people drafted O.J. Howard out there and they would like him more involved.
Some of them dropped him in other leagues, I heard.
And then some of us added him, John.
All right, let's move on to, again, Pat's Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals are 11.5-point road dogs to the San Francisco 49ers, a total of 46. We know the Cardinals, again, are 3-6-1. The San Francisco 49ers are coming off their first loss of the season. Chris and he's talking to you at 8-1 this season. These teams played just a couple weeks ago, Pat. It was that Thursday night game where Kenyon Drake made his debut, played really well. They ran all over the 49ers for a little bit. We're also coming off a great Kyler Murray performance. And most importantly, it's really to Christian Kirk, who started the season in the slot with Larry Fitzgerald, then got hurt, and now is emerging, Pat, as an outside wide receiver. Do you think he can do damage against this 49ers defense?
I do. And so Christian Kirk was a huge dud in week 9 against the 49ers. People were really disappointed. He was ranked fairly highly that week. But then, as we saw last week, he did all of his regression to the mean at once. And I'm optimistic about Kyler Murray in this game because I think the Cardinals are changing the face of their offense. They've improved their pass protection a lot over the past month or two, which will really be put to the test against the 49ers, of course. But this has become a more aired out kind of vertical offense like we were hoping to see. And Christian Kirk's been a part of that. For games 1 through 8, he was playing 75% of his snaps in the slot. That number's decreased to 17% over the past 2 weeks. So not a fluke last week that Christian Kirk was catching a 69-yard touchdown down the sideline. He's being used as an outside receiver now, probably an overdue adjustment for the 49ers. And, Kyler had a big day against the 49ers in week 9, like you alluded to. It was goosed by an 88-yard touchdown to Andy Isabella, which you could say was maybe a fluke, but Kyler hit Andy Isabella for another big play last Sunday in addition to the Christian Kirk plays. So I just think, especially with their backfield kind of in chaos, I think the Cardinals are kind of adjusting the way they're playing on offense, and it's going to Kyler's floor is going to be high regardless, but I think now we're finally getting into ceiling territory for Kyler on a weekly basis.
Well, let's elaborate on that backfield you mentioned, because David Johnson looked like Kalen Ballage. Meanwhile, Kenyon Drake got 16 touches on 64% of their snaps. So where do you have David Johnson ranked and Kenyon Drake ranked as well on a week that David Johnson is in full at practice right now, completely cleared their injury report despite what we saw?
Yeah, it's a weird situation. He looks like someone who needs back surgery. He's been listed with the ankle lately, but he had a back injury early in the season. And to me, it looks like a guy whose back is not allowing him to move laterally. And the wild card here is Chase Edmonds' status, but he didn't practice with his hamstring injury on Wednesday. If it's just Drake and Johnson, which I think it'll be, you have to have Drake ranked ahead of David Johnson at this point. I've got Drake in the low 20s, David Johnson in the low 30s, and even that's maybe charitable with him. He just couldn't move last Sunday, and they used him as such. He only got 5 carries for 2 yards. So catastrophic day. And like you said, we've already seen Drake dominate this 49ers defense, and it just seems like it would be silly to do anything other than have Drake well ahead of Johnson in the rankings.
Before we move on, Dr. Pat, I do want to reiterate a point that you mentioned. 20 sacks given up by the Arizona Cardinals and Kyler Murray in the first 4 games of the season. 11 sacks surrendered in the last 6 games. And let's wax poetic here a little bit about Kyler Murray because he's unreal right now. Like the 3 touchdown throws he had to Christian Kirk were awesome. A 4th and 5 along the sideline to Larry Fitzgerald that Fitz tipped to himself and got a knee in. And even Cliff Kingsbury has improved. You know, earlier in the season I was very critical because there was a game, I can't remember which one it was, but like on 3 or 4, goal-to-go situations, he's just like, no, we're going to kick field goals. And now he's going for like fake punts in his own territory. He's going for it on 4th and 5. And what Kyler's doing so well, and we talk about this in the wrap-up show every Monday morning, go and subscribe to that, is he's not turning the football over. You know, we look around to like Daniel Jones, and we look around to Sam Darnold, and we look around to all these other young quarterbacks, Josh Allen across the league. It's like, oh, they have moments, you know, they look good, but then they just throw it all away. Kyler's not doing any of that, Pat, and I know he had a turnover last week. What he's doing so well is creating big plays, elevating the people around him, but it's not coming at a cost in terms of turnovers or sacks. He's really an impressive player that I can't wait for him even in year 2 or year 3, but even in year 1, he looks great.
He does. And his turnover last week even might not have been his fault. Trent Sherfield fell down. And what you basically said about Cliff Kingsbury, Josh, is he's finally living every day like he has a Big 12 defense day, you know? Just maximize your offense. Your Big 12 defense is going to give up 30 points every week, Cliff. And you got to go for it. No more field goals.
And 23 points in his last matchup against the Niners a couple weeks back. I mean, you're starting him. I know people are concerned about the matchup, but you're starting him. And I think the offense has actually gotten better these past few weeks with Andy Isabella hitting season highs and snap lately, and Kenyon Drake continued to be more involved.
I haven't even asked about the 49ers offense, and I feel like there's a lot we can take from it, from what happened on Monday night against the Seattle Seahawks. You don't agree?
No. Okay, well, if we take from Seattle and we assume Sanders and Kittle won't play, then we assume that they're going to tank.
Well, Kittle likely isn't playing in this game. And
Sanders is question mark.
Okay. Before we have this conversation, let's have a conversation about Jimmy Garoppolo.
Okay.
Because I think that that's where this all kind of stems from. And I understand, right? Like, he got his offensive tackles back for the first time, and they didn't play as well as before they got injured. Then George Kittle went out, and Emmanuel Sanders went out. And, passes were dropped. But, Pat, when you look like in isolation, and you might disagree with this, but when you look at isolation with Jimmy Garoppolo, passes were off target. He was trying to throw it directly to the defense. Whenever he was pressured, he got frenetic and a la Jared Goff in way too many situations. And I tweeted during the game, and I got flack for it immediately, like, this type of game can't happen for Jimmy Garoppolo in January when they make the playoffs in order for them to win. And I understand that it went poorly on the 49ers side of the ball, like with those drops and with those injuries. But guess what? Like, those happen when you get to January, and then the quarterback has to elevate them. And the quarterback, again, did very little to elevate in this situation. And, Pat, that's the issue and the question that we've had with Jimmy throughout this entire time, and he just doesn't have a lot of moments and exposures to prove us wrong. But in the one and most recent ones that we did, he has to play better.
He does. It would have helped, like you kind of alluded to, if Kendrick Bourne hadn't turned in maybe the worst wide receiver performance I've ever seen.
Pretty bad.
In NFL history, with just one horrifying drop after another. But you compare Jimmy's performance to Jared Goff, I say it went beyond that. It was like Blaine Gabbert, where you could like actually almost literally see the fear on his face from Jadeveon Clowney and the Seahawks front seven. I mean, he was just playing. It was a terrified performance. Happy feet. This can't be happening at this point. And that's to make everything about Kyler. Everything in my life is about Kyler. How dysfunctional the 49ers offense is right now also plays into Kyler Murray's hands. I think the 49ers are going to have trouble staying on the field because no George Kittle's obviously huge, but no Emmanuel Sanders is as big. I mean, they say what you will about Jimmy. Him and Emmanuel had an amazing connection in Week 9. It seemed like they'd been playing together 3 or 4 years, running timing routes and showing great chemistry. And this is, and now Joe Staley might be out again with a broken finger. Jimmy is going to really be put to the test after what was an unacceptably bad performance.
But with all that said, Daigle, about Jimmy Garoppolo struggling this past week, and again, they just played the Cardinals, and he put up a performance that actually gave us confidence back then. What about this 49ers offense with people missing, like probably Matt Breida as well, a name we didn't even mention? Who's stepping up? Because that's easy in the backfield. We'll see Tevin Coleman, we'll see Raheem Mostert, and Deebo Samuel got fed when Emmanuel Sanders went out.
It is a slight bump to Tevin Coleman's usage without Matt Breida, but as we know, they are going to continue running two backs. Whenever Tevin Coleman was out those in weeks 2 and 3, and he missed a portion of week 1, Raheem Mostert played 35% of the snaps in those games, and he's used as a pass-catching back as well in all 3 of those games. So I would expect him to play 35 to 40%, and in that offense, you can start him because he will get targets and he will get catches. You can absolutely flex Mostert, as I'm doing in some leagues, if you have Matt Breida and Mostert's available on the wire. Deebo Samuel, though, if Sanders is out, becomes the number 1 option because, as we saw with Kendrick Bourne, they legitimately do not have anywhere else to go. Like, Deebo Samuel was in on 70 of 82 snaps. He led them with 8 catches for 112 yards receiving. He's an impressive big rookie, and he's going to get all their targets.
And the home game helps as well. Pat, let's move on to the next one. Chicago Bears at the Los Angeles Rams. It's actually Sunday Night Football. Rams are 6.5-point favorites, 41.5 total in this one. You have the 5-4 Rams versus the 4-5 Chicago Bears. Where do you want to start with this one, Pat? Is it on Jared Goff's side? Is it the Rams side, who are coming off an absolutely disastrous performance against the Pittsburgh Steelers? I mean, Cooper Kupp didn't even have a catch in that game. Jared Goff looked like he had no clue what he was doing. He was getting pressured. He was getting blitzed. But even like in moments when a pocket and a sliver of space was there, he didn't climb. He didn't create anything on his own. Do we think the Bears defense can do that again to this Rams offense? And if so, that's a major concern for any of these, extra passing or rushing pieces that the Rams offer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm worried. Jared Goff has lost. For a while we could explain it away as road Goff. It hasn't even really been a home road thing this year. He's lost the QB1 benefit of the doubt at home, and the Bears defense has like a lot of name recognition, name value, whatever you want to say. But the Steelers defense has been better than the Bears defense this year. But the Bears, I've lost where I was going with that point, Josh. This is a really great point that I'm making here. Here's why this point is good. 1, 2, 3. No, what I was trying to say is the Steelers defense is better than the Bears defense, but the Bears defense is still a very concerning home matchup for Jared Goff, and especially after what they saw last week. The Bears now, they're going to have their ears pinned back, and Jared Goff's nearing the point where you're going to try to make him beat you deep before you worry. And we're reaching the portion where defenses are just going to be teeing off on Jared Goff until he makes them pay for it. And he hasn't looked like a player making them capable of paying for it for over a month now. This is to me, Goff has lost all benefit of the doubt, no matter where the game is played and no matter who the opponent is.
And what about this backfield? Because Todd Gurley, the catches and the snaps are now catching up to him. Todd Gurley was touchdown dependent, and all of a sudden, Todd Gurley is not scoring touchdown, which has absolutely tanked his fantasy outlook. So where do you have Todd Gurley ranked this week?
Gurley's a low-end RB2. He has only 22 touches over the Rams' past 2 games, and that included the fiasco with the Steelers, but it also included a game against the Bengals, one of the worst defenses in the NFL, probably the worst run defense in the NFL. So Todd Gurley is not producing against anyone lately, and we've kind of joked about it. He's lacking any lateral explosion right now. He still looks really good when he gets ahead of steam going north and south, but he can't go east and west right now. And again, this is a really, really concerning. How can you not be concerned about what you've seen from Todd Gurley? Yeah. Basically, he's a low end RB2 right now,
and it gets worse for the Rams. Brian Allen is out, their center. Rob Havenstein is week to week. The last time Jared Goff played the Chicago Bears, he actually had the worst performance of his career, completing just 45% of his passes.
And was it actually worse than the game last week?
and 4 interceptions, Pat, so it does get worse. Look, maybe I'm a little bit bitter. I mean, the Rams didn't hire me out of college, I'll say it. But also, this is a team and a fan base that right now I don't think wants to admit where Jared Goff is right now. And it's interesting because you say to them and you criticize Goff and they said, well, now he's behind, the worst offensive line in the league. And last year it was the best. It's not the worst offensive line in the league. There are a lot of quarterbacks across the league that deal with bad offensive line play. Sure, it's bottom half for sure, but now it's getting even worse.
Yes.
And that is a major issue while the team is also getting even worse. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, and Havenstein lines up where Khalil Mack is going to play.
That's not fun.
It's not going to be good.
Yeah, Josh, you were just kind of hitting on points we made on Monday's podcast. I mean, Jared Goff, is not the only quarterback in the league with a bad. Ask Russell Wilson about this. Ask Deshaun Watson about this. You can have good days behind bad offensive lines. And I'm going to repeat what I said Monday. I mean, Jared Goff, basically what you're seeing is a quarterback who cannot create offense on his own.
Yep.
Like, unless everything is perfect around him, which it was for the first 18 months of the Sean McVay era, Jared Goff can't create offense on his own. He's like a shooter in basketball. Like, unless you set like 3 picks to get him free, you can't get an open shot. And this is kind of how I feel when I'm watching Jared Goff right now.
And I think we could say the same thing about the other guy on the other side of the ball, and that's Mitch Trubisky, who's also struggling to create offense. And Mitch Trubisky at least had a floor last year because they were running with him. But this year, less than 2 carries per game. He's just a guy standing behind in the pocket, missing throws. He's only hitting throws at the line of scrimmage. He's averaging 172 passing yards per game. It's been absolutely miserable. So where do you fit in all these pieces around him in the receiving game among your ranks?
In the garbage?
Do you guys want to hear a bold prediction for this game?
No.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
You know who's going to have the most quarterback fantasy points in this game? It's Chase Daniel. Mitchell Trubisky will get benched at halftime finally. Chase Daniel's going to come out 2 second-half touchdowns, and he's going to have more fantasy points than either Jared Goff or Mitchell Trubisky. Maybe Blake Bortles will be in the mix for QB overall one in this game because he'll probably come in too. But yeah, I think Chase Daniels, who I really like for fantasy purposes in this game.
Is that a joke or are you being serious?
No, it's mostly, it's a 92% a joke.
I think, you know what? And I never thought stepping into the studio today that I would stick up for Mitch Trubisky, and I'm not. But he did have 3 nice throws last week. 3 nice throws, and 3 they were vertical shots. They were, in phase. They were in rhythm. They were to open receivers, but he hit them. And maybe there is a little bit of an improvement as we go along.
He's playing the Lions defense that I believe is playing 11 backups.
Yeah,
and
I know. He hit the throws that he wasn't hitting in previous weeks.
He proved he can hit throws against the terrible defense, like when there's maybe they weren't coverage busts. I don't know, but. I didn't see anything that really changed my opinion of Mitchell Trubisky against the Lions.
Either way, Allen Robinson, top 20, top 20, 25, whatever. We do need to talk about David Montgomery really quick, though, because he's handled 65 of their 86 backfield touches over the last 3 weeks, despite the fact that he's only breaking tackles at a higher rate than David Johnson, Sony Michel, and Kalen Ballage. Yeah. That tells you exactly what he's been doing. So is he an opportunity-based, like top 20, top 25 play? Or in this matchup against a tougher defense than the Lions, are you sinking him further than that high-end RB2 range?
I'll say I had him lower than I thought. I was going to, before I sat down and actually did the rankings this week, I kind of thought I'd have David Montgomery in the RB 14 to 16 range, but it is more the RB 20 range because the Rams are really tough against the run. But David Montgomery, he has 66 carries over the past 3 weeks. That's 6th amongst running backs. Matt Nagy has made it clear how he's going to run his offense going forward, and it is fully established. And see, David Montgomery, he was almost it was just last week, right? He had the catastrophic first half, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, and then saved it with 2 second-half touchdowns. I just think kind of no matter the game script, no matter the situation, Matt Nagy's going to be running David Montgomery. So opponent and game script just don't matter as much for him right now because the Bears' offense is so dysfunctional, and they're going to run the ball no matter what.
Hayden Wink's time here in the podcast. Hayden Winks writes the fantasy forecast. You can check it out on Rotoworld. If you haven't done that through 10 weeks, 1, shame on you.
You're missing out.
2, start now. There's still weeks left in the season. It's a fantastic column. Hayden, let's start off with the Atlanta Falcons going to the Carolina Panthers. 6-point favorites the Panthers are at 5-4 in the season, a 50.5 total in this one. Let's start on the Panthers side. All right, they're coming off a loss in Lambeau Field. Some people might call it a feel-good performance for Kyle Allen. This guy won't do that. It is important to note that obviously Christian McCaffrey is still getting his, but DJ Moore has turned into a dependable starter each and every week among those Panthers wide receivers.
Yeah, DJ Moore checks in as the wide receiver 17 on the year. He has so many air yards, so many targets, and they're really high value targets, unlike Curtis Samuel, who cannot win downfield right now with Kyle Allen. But DJ Moore slid into an every week wide receiver 2. There's nothing about the Falcons defense that's scaring us away from that. The one thing I'm kind of curious what your guys' thoughts are is the Panthers are projected for 28 points. That seems kind of high. What's big?
Well, they're facing the Falcons defense.
Well, the thing is, the Falcons, they changed defensive coordinators. Jeff Ulbrich takes over the play calling, and then they rack up 6 sacks whenever they had 7 sacks on the entire year heading into the game. Having said that, yes, I am of the demographic that believes complete fluke. Just game script that went the correct way. As Hayden, I texted you earlier this week, humble brag to me, and said, oh, hey, we have people now mentioning another podcast, your forecast column, because some teams happen to perform poorly after bye weeks, even though we assume that all teams perform great after bye weeks.
Yeah.
The Saints just tanked after their bye week.
Can I mention something from another podcast as well? Because I think this is kind of the issue with sometimes analysis that doesn't include watching the actual game, okay? And I'm not saying that like, oh, the eye in the sky doesn't lie, because it absolutely does, because we all have our biases. But there's a thought out there, Hayden, right now, that either Curtis Samuel is bad or Curtis Samuel is going to have a big game coming up. And I don't think it has to be that binary, because Curtis Samuel right now is attached to Kyle Allen, who is not good. Like Curtis Samuel can still win vertically one-on-one. Curtis Samuel is still one of the quickest wide receivers in the NFL. And so it doesn't have to be like, well, he has to have a good performance or he's just not good at football. Curtis Samuel's very good at football. He's just attached to a below-average quarterback, and that can absolutely hurt someone for an entire season.
And they kind of been using him in like a one-dimensional aspect. I think he would be awesome underneath too. They just kind of opting not to use that part of the field with him, which is kind of frustrating. But I am expecting a bigger week eventually. I don't think that we should just say it, because I think he's the wide receiver 5 in air yards. I don't think that just means that he's like a wide receiver 2 every week. I think he's remains a very boom or bust prospect, but. I wouldn't get too crazy on either side. I think that's probably the best take.
Lots of local buzz that Kyle Allen could be the quarterback of the future.
I feel like you're downgrading Kyle Allen on the wrong week, because Kyle Allen's going to have a great week this week.
No, he could. You know what, Daigle, and that's a fine point. I truly wish I could sit here and say, and it would be this simple, that Kyle Allen is just very fine,
Right.
Like, that's who he is. But I feel like because at the local level and the national level, there's just this buzz that, well, the Panthers might move on from Cam Newton and, they're truly thinking that Kyle Allen could be the quarterback. That would be wild. That would be so bogus, because this is someone that is not elevating anyone around him, that still was not the quarterback who won that game against the Green Bay Packers. He missed throws in that game, including that 1st and goal to Christian McCaffrey that no one is talking about. But the recipe for success, if Kyle Allen is your quarterback, it's Christian McCaffrey running like a superstar for years and years and years. It's good defensive play that puts it in a neutral or positive game script. And then it's Norv Turner calling great schemes each and every drive. That is not a recipe for sustained success. So maybe I'm overcompensating here, right?
I just think that we are supposed to work in black and white and hot takes. However, all can be true. They can move on from Cam Newton. Kyle Allen can perform poor and still get them through this year, and then they cannot turn to Kyle Allen next year.
Okay.
Everything can be true.
Then who are they turning to? Because right now they're a 500 football team.
That's in the offseason. And we will talk about that a lot in the offseason.
Right.
For this week, I think Kyle Allen's a top 15 play. I think he's the top streaming option among waiver wires. I think he's a solid quarterback against a Falcons defense that I don't believe in. I think it was a one-week fluke last week.
I do think just overall, and sorry, we have Hayden on the line.
Sorry,
I'm just talking to a
We're just going to start a two-man CBS or NBC show.
But I do just feel like for some reason, maybe it's because of the wins, that Kyle Allen is being elevated in his evaluation if you just watch him. If you just watch him, it's a lot of the pieces around him, and he's not doing anything individually. Hayden, do you want to ask you about Brian Hill? Because Brian Hill was the #1 waiver ad of the week, according to John Daigle.
Let's talk about Brian Hill a lot,
because the Panthers' run defense has been atrocious. But the run game for the Falcons hasn't been good either. However, Brian Hill, Hayden, should get about 20 touches. What do you expect him to do this week?
Yeah, that's really like the only thing I really care about. Dan Quinn said that we've got a lot of trust and belief in him. So that kind of caught my eye. And they really don't have another solid option. So it's going to be the Brian Hill show. I think 15, 20 carries, possibly another 4 or 5 catches. And yeah, Brian Hill seems solid. Like, he's not the worst back I've ever seen. He's certainly not the best back. The matchup's good. Falcons projected 22 points, and they lost their best red zone weapon in Austin Hooper, at least for this season. So, Brian Hill, solid RB2 at least.
It is important in the industry to disagree if you hear something that you've researched and don't believe in yourself. And the Monday podcast that we do, sometimes I come in here and have wavering opinions because, Pro Football Focus, Pro Football Reference, Football Outsiders, all still releasing data. We don't have full takes yet. It's a big picture pod. And so Monday we were talking about Brian Hill, and you said that you didn't believe he was truly the number one pickup. You were concerned about a running back on a not so good team. And while I understand that, I should have pushed you back more because I think Brian Hill is not only a top 15 play this week. I think Brian Hill takes the job full time the rest of the season, and that's not takey at all. That's what I truly believe because I think he's a really good player on a good offense. It is just a very bad team. This is not the Dolphins' offense and picking up Kalen Ballage, which is a bad player on a bad offense. It is a good player on a good offense.
Right, but not a good running game, and it hasn't been a good running game all year.
That's fair, but the touches, Devontae Freeman leaves 5 targets per game up for grabs.
Right.
Kadri Allison was active last week, and they didn't give him a snap at all.
Right, because he's even worse.
Right, well, that's fine.
Yeah, he's bad.
So, but if Brian Hill got 22 touches on 38 snaps,
that means the Falcons win this game.
And I think the Falcons may have a little chance here, buddy.
The spread is 6, so that's a large
They're going to have success running the ball. It's against the number 32 rush defense DVOA.
Yeah.
So I think Brian Hill is a guy, and I wrote this in the column, you don't pick up just for this week, even though this week he is a league winner. You pick him up for the idea you have a top 20 running back the rest of the season.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Again, biases come into a factor here. And I just remember my thoughts on Brian Hill and how he's just an adequate player. And really, Hayden, the NFL's thoughts on Brian Hill. He started off with the Packers, couldn't fit with them. He's an interesting player aesthetically. He looks explosive. He's kind of just an average athlete.
Set collegiate records.
Yeah, I don't know. And I just think all my rosters this year, and I honestly, this plays a factor in at least my fantasy advice, I don't need him this year. I'm set.
That's fair.
Across my running backs, basically every single lineup. And so I didn't need someone like Brian Hill. And I'm just nervous that this Falcons team has a bad offensive line, a good passing game, a bad offensive line. But in order for him to be successful, something needs to happen like last week, where it has to be a neutral game script. And I don't see that necessarily happening this week. I don't. All right, Hayden, you're still here. Let's go to the Dallas Cowboys at the Detroit Lions. Dallas on the road, 5.5-point favorites. They are coming off a loss. But Hayden, this was Dak Prescott's maybe best performance of his career.
Oh, was he good?
And he's getting everyone involved. It's Michael Gallup, it's Amari Cooper, Randall Cobb. The one who wasn't involved was Ezekiel Elliott. Tell us how you think this is going to factor in here against a Detroit defense, which is god-awful.
Yeah, they're awful against the run and the pass right now. And like you said, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and Randall Cobb all had season highs in air yards last week. And Dak Prescott's playing a top 3 quarterback this year. He's certainly in the MVP running. I don't care about the record. He's either first, second, or third in basically every advanced metric. And then going back with Zeke, I think this is probably a rebound game for him. The Cowboys are trending in the opposite direction with their early down pass rate. At the beginning of the season, they were at the top of the NFL, and now they're in the middle of the pack, and they're running the ball 55% of the time on early downs. We're looking at another 20, 25 touches for Zeke this week, top 3 running back.
Nice.
You're starting Zeke, you're starting Dak, and what is a smash spot? You're starting Cooper and Gallup for sure. Let's talk about the Lions offense with Jeff Driscoll likely under center. What did the air yards and the data behind the scenes show you for Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones? Because, yes, Kenny Golladay did spike a touchdown. Do we expect that to continue with Driscoll under center?
Right, so their usage was pretty much the same as it was with Matthew Stafford and the lineup. Obviously, we have to downgrade him by a lot with the efficiency. But the one thing with the Cowboys defense is their scheme, they don't allow a lot of big plays over the top. If you look at their next-gen stats, I have this in the forecast, they give up a lot of targets right into the middle of the field, about 5 to 10 yards. So that's kind of in the area where Hawkinson and Amendola are going to eat. I'm not projecting them to do anything this week because it's Jeff Driscoll and that's their third and fourth weapons. But I'm not expecting Golladay or Marvin Jones to be that effective. I would still start both of them, obviously. But we need Matthew Stafford back.
Norris hit last week with the Panthers and the Packers game. It's going to hit this week. 5.5-point spread in this. Dallas wins by at least a touchdown. At least a touchdown.
Even if the Cowboys roll, though, Hayden, I know you've been looking at their backfield snaps for Detroit because I think J.D. McKissic is an interesting, top 30 guy this week if Ty Johnson remains out with concussion because they used J.D. McKissic as they could have as they should have used Kerryon Johnson all season long. He ran 37 routes to Perkins' 6. He was a true workhorse in that game.
Yeah, and going back to the next-gen stats, if Dallas wants to take away the deep pass, McKissic's going to be involved underneath. I think we can see 5 receptions out of him, and that's certainly enough to keep him in the top 24 this week. I think he's a plug-and-play option. I would doubt Ty Johnson plays with this concussion.
The Cowboys are just 5-4, but for some reason, I just have unreal confidence in them.
It's coaching.
And someone needs to talk me out of it. Maybe Daigle next week you show up and you get on my case about the Cowboys, but I still think they're Super Bowl contenders. Anyways, let's move on to the Monday Night Football game. It's actually in Mexico City. Did you know that?
I did.
I didn't. 6-4 Kansas City Chiefs against the Los Angeles Chargers, who are 4-6. It's a 52.5 total in this game, with the Chiefs just 3.5-point road dogs here. Hayden, let's look at the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes was electric in his return. I mean, the throws he was making to Mecole Hardman. Tyreek Hill is on another level right now. And the backfield, maybe more important than anything, it truly is Damien Williams now to lose.
Yeah, so this is one of the decision points. We have to decide, or we have to kind of project if LaShawn McCoy is going to be active or not. Andy Reid said that we'll see. I'll manage him the way I think is best so he stays effective for the rest of the season. But the thing with that is that implies that LaShawn McCoy's been effective this year, and he's 44th out of 47th in PFF's elusive rating. Even if LaShawn's active, I think it's Damien Williams' backfield. If LaShawn McCoy's out again, then we're looking at a top 10 play easily. So, Mahomes was just so good. That really surprised me. I thought he was going to be pretty limited. Obviously, I was really wrong. 446 yards, 3 touchdowns. So, Damien Williams is possibly a league winner.
On the Monday pod, we talked about the Chiefs' run defense. Their passing defense actually improved as the season's gone along. The run defense, not so much. Right now, it's dropped all the way to 31st in run DVOA. I'm actually going to turn to Daigle for this one first. Diggs, Melvin Gordon, it's like the weird story of this backfield, right? Austin Eckler started off as a possible league winner if you get that volume throughout the season. Then Melvin Gordon came in and absolutely stunk. Well, the past couple weeks, Melvin Gordon has looked good.
Spry.
At least decent. Do we think, and in order for this game to be close, the Chargers are going to have to rely and win in the running game? Can they do that this week?
And I think that's okay if they do, because as you said, Melvin Gordon has finally hit himself into season shape. We know he missed all of training camp and just came out sluggish because he hadn't gotten those carries. He hadn't been hit by other defenders. Now he looks spry. They can actually lean on him to go against this Kansas City attack. So Melvin Gordon has suddenly become the Austin Eckler type of this offense. And in some leagues, I know a lot of people may have traded for Austin Eckler or gotten Melvin Gordon while they were deciding what to do with them. But you can genuinely start both of those guys.
Hayden, I watch these games every week. And we are through 10 weeks of the season. I still don't know what the Chargers are. As a former employee, can you explain it to me?
They're the same as they've always been. Right now it's the coaching staff. That's my belief. I have issues with them. But Phillip Rivers, he might just be washed right now. He has a 3.8 touchdown rate. That's the lowest of his career. And he has no time with the offensive line. They're so injured. Everyone's Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, both of these guys are due for touchdown or positive touchdown regression, but they need to move the ball better, be more consistent, and then hit these targets in the red zone. So right now we have Hunter Henry ascending. He might be the tight end 1 overall this week. Yep. Him and Travis Kelce. He's just been so good. And then Melvin Gordon's ascending. I do think Melvin Gordon's going to end up being a league winner. He's just getting all the volume right now, and they're gonna want to run the ball. And if Phillip Rivers isn't doing it, then I can easily see them saying, you know what, let's just run Melvin into the ground and go from there.
That, again, is Hayden Winks. Hayden writes the Fantasy Forecast column. Hayden, I know you want to mention something about the column. Go pitch it to everyone.
Right, so it's a fantasy football column, but this week I looked at all of Lamar Jackson's rushing production to see if he's taking hits or not. There's some really interesting data. I looked at his scrambles, if he's running out of bounds, if he's sliding, how he slides, and then how often he's getting tackled. There's a pretty interesting information, and kind of need to
Can you give us a taste?
Lamar Jackson's. Yeah, so what I learned is Lamar Jackson doesn't slide very often. He does his head first slide, but he's really good at avoiding. Yeah, he runs out of bounds and he avoids contact for the most part. And a lot of his runs are designed runs, and Sports Info Solutions and other people have kind of referenced that those are the safer runs, and then scrambling is a little more dangerous for quarterbacks. And then the last thing I looked at is he getting hit in the pocket? And the answer to that is he's getting hit a lot less than he was, or than he is compared to other quarterbacks. So I have all the information there. So it's going to be at the end of page 1.
Everyone, go and check that out. Hayden actually will join us for Rotoworld Live again. That's Sunday, noon Eastern, twitch.tv/Rotoworld. Hayden's making the cross-country flight. Get some movies, get some books, get some entertainment.
But it's okay because it's quicker this way than it is the other way.
Because of wind?
Yeah, the winds. You didn't know that?
No.
It slows your flight down.
Honestly, that's not really how I spend my time, is learning about those things.
It slows your flight down by like an hour. Well, I did it so often that I now know.
All right, that does it for us. Everyone out there, thank you for listening. If you enjoy it, hit that subscribe button, tell one friend, leave a ring review in that little box if you want to help us out even a little bit more. Again, we'll be back Sunday, Rotoworld Live. Daigle, we'll talk to everyone then.
See you then.
See ya.